Hi everybody, it's Colin Stevenson here, joined by my hero John Lenhart. Hi John.
Hi.
Today we're going to talk about the application of systems thinking, okay, in the process and how it can make things better. So John, without further ado, would you like to take us forward on this journey, please?
Right, so I want to take a backward step as a true synthesis thinker would, is let's go over the previous two episodes. We talked about Dr. Russell Ackoff. We talked about how basically systems thinking is everything is a system. It's a whole made up of parts. The whole has a defining property. And when you take it all apart, it loses its defining property. The way to improve a system is to improve the interaction between parts. So the system's ability or productivity is the product of the interactions. It's not the sum of the parts. And we've said synthesis system thinking would fix the world. And I know there's a lot of systems thinkers out there, and I'm challenging any systems thinker to show me how their synthesis systems thinker, this gets tough to say sometimes, that there is synthesis, because everybody is analysis systems thinking. Dr. Ackoff was synthesis. He couldn't replicate it. He couldn't explain it. So it kind of died with him. He got all these great effects. He was a truth savant, but he couldn't get the effects. So what I'm trying to do is help people understand this. So either you are able to approach a systems thinker and show them where they're wrong, or you can point them to me. And if they're a synthesis system thinker, I want to work with them because we would be able to change the world. So one of the examples I use is if you imagine a company where there's two people, let's say you and me, Colin, we have a company and we're able to get like 95% of our work done, and we want to hire a third employee. So we hire this third employee and we know they can do the 5%. However, what we'll find out is after we hire them that you and I now aren't able to get all our work done. In fact, we're worse off. Now, if you and I were 95% and this person's able to do the 5 and we're the sum of the parts, why are things worse?
Because
go on. What do you think it is?
Because the interactions will change in the workplace, which doesn't allow us to run at full capacity. So that's why we need to understand the system and what we need to make the system better, and not that part of the work that needs to be done.
Right. So the math of this, and I hopefully won't put anybody to sleep with the math of this, but our company had one interaction, Colin to me, that's it. Okay. When we added a third person, guess how many interactions there are in the company now?
There'll be lots more, because there'll be me to you, you to them to me, and then me to both of you, and then both of you back. Yep.
There'll be 7 interactions. Okay. And this is what this looks like. There is one interaction where it's me interacting with Colin, interacting with the employee. So you imagine all 3 of us in the room interacting. That's one interaction. Then there's 3, me to the new employee, me to Colin, Colin, the new employee. Then there's 3 interactions where if Colin and I are in agreement and we're interacting with that employee, if me and the new employee are in agreement and we're interacting with Colin, if Colin, the new employee, with me. So you notice you might have a friend who you go, I like this friend, I like that friend, but when those 2 friends get together, I don't like either of my friends. That's a different system. So we have the system of Colin, we have the system of John, but when Colin and John are in agreement, they're like a different system.
Yep.
So we now have 7 interactions. We used to have 1, me and Colin, we have 7. How many interactions is the new employee involved in out of these 7?
1, 2, 3. Pretty much all of them. 5.
Except for?
Yeah, apart from the ones between you and me,
So they're involved in 6. So notice what we just did. We added 1 employee, and they are now involved in 6 of our 7 interactions. And the math only goes up. You could have, 10 employees and you have 1 employee, new one. The number of interactions they're involved with it's like 90% of whatever it is. So it's like, that's why they say one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. We kind of have these sayings, but it's like the way to improve this system would be to find what interaction is decreasing. So you and I interacting together are still at 95%. But you interacting with the employee are at like minus 10%. Me with the new employee might be minus 20. You and I towards the new employee might be minus 40. It's like, wait a minute. So when I go in to help a company, or a sports team, I'm not interested in the abilities of the individual. I'm interested in how they fit together. And some interactions are more important than others. When you look at a sports team, the center fielder's interaction with the wing is a lot more important than with like a defender or fullback.
Yep.
And it's like that's where a lot of these athletes don't understand. It's like the coach could go, you might be better than that player at this position. However, the other two players interact better with that player than you. And the team is better off with a player who's a little less one-on-one ability that you have, but better. I told a story the last time about the Lakers and the Pistons. It's the same thing.
Yep.
The interaction between these Hall of Fame players wasn't as good and profitable as the interaction between these not Hall of Fame players. And the overall ability of the system is the product of the interaction. So that's one of the first places. It's like, if you want to improve your company, communication. We have these communication guidelines. If you want to improve how you interact on the internet, we have these communication guidelines. If you follow these 3 guidelines, make statements on yourself, ask questions, answer questions, you're never going to log off with any regret. When you don't do that, that's when you log off and go, oh, I don't feel right. Something went wrong today.
Yeah, and people don't realize that communication guidelines is what we've been taken further away from through the systems that we learn from. So that's the government system, the education system, all the systems that are running the world the way it is just now are certain liberties and freedoms of speech, etc., and interactions have been taken away to a degree, which means it's our choice to live within that or live within the kind of constraints and practice ourselves to bring it back up to that sense of kind of balance. And
right. We talked about flows down to one thought and then giving up control. So when I say you have freckles, that's what we say. The system that we're being told is make the statement, do everything direct, analysis, straightforward. I see you have freckles. And now I just given this person a bunch of thoughts. I see you have freckles would be totally different to the person's brain. And so what happens is when we try to do stuff directly, when we try to teach directly, things don't work. I say Akoff's a system thinker. And so you and I have talked a little bit here and there about fractals.
Yep.
And fractals is this repeating pattern that no matter what level you look at, you see the same pattern. Systems are fractal. So when you look at a system, a person, when you, and I shared this a couple of weeks ago, your cell in your body only does 2 things. Every cell in your body has 2 responsibilities: to communicate and repair.
Yep.
That's every cell in your body. Your cell is a part of what's a bigger system in your cell, your organs. All of your organs then have the same purpose.
Communicate and
repair. When they don't do that, they become cancerous.
Yep.
Your organs are part of a system. What's your 2 goals? Communicate and repair. When you don't do that, you have mental and emotional issues.
Yep.
You are a part of a system, a community. When your community doesn't communicate and repair, you commit injustices.
Yep.
Racism, sexism.
Yep.
All these communities are part of a bigger system, the world. When the world doesn't communicate and repair, we have wars. So I just took you through 5 systems. And that's the way it's fractal. Every system on every level, no matter I look at the world or I look at your cell, I'm going to see the same thing. Things are fractal. Acuff always took a step up. Acuff wouldn't look at you, the person, and break you down to organs. He'd look at you and then say, what's the bigger system, the community? So that's the three, and I've shared this with the psychological series, but I want to reshare it here. There's 3 steps to analysis, and our brains do this naturally. That's why people are naturally racist. The 3 steps are, and I look at like getting a pen. The first step is take it apart. That's analysis. I look at you, the person, and I take you apart. You are this color, you're this sex, I'm going to take you apart into all your pieces. The second step is to analyze, what does each part do? What does this part do? How can I make it better? What does this part do? How can I make it better? And the third step is you put it back together. So this is what every consultant comes in and says. They go, I'm going to make your organization better. I'm going to come in, get to know your organization, take it apart, look at all the parts, make all the parts better, put it all back together. You're going to end up with a better organization. And they are, if they use that on people, if you use that on equipment, that's what you do to an engine. You take an engine apart, you clean the parts, you put it together. That's great. That's called a mechanistic viewpoint. We apply a mechanistic viewpoint to people, we become racist and sexist.
Yep.
So every consultant that comes in and says, I'm going to be an analysis systems thinker, is racist and sexist. And that's what they're doing. So when they come in to do that, they're hurting your organization.
Absolutely. And this is where, when you look at people as their unique self, everything else doesn't matter. The parts don't matter, everything else, because we can show the communication between the intangible, which means it's not what we're looking at. We can have the communication between the intangible drivers that allow people to see them for who they are, not what they are, who they are. And once they start communicating that way, it doesn't matter if it's a male, female, anything in between, if they're black, white, orange, blue, purple, that doesn't matter, because all that matters is how we interact with each other, how we communicate, and how we repair the bigger system, which is the company, which is then the big, and once we repair that, that's all we're striving for, repair constantly. So if anything fails, it's how we learn. Through commission, we'll repair it through communication, and we just keep going this way. Everything in the world can be repaired by communication. It does not matter. Anybody, I will take that challenge on anybody here. I will take that challenge. How do we make the world better? Well, we would have to communicate with our governments. They would have to communicate and speak to us the way that we want to be spoken to, and not dictate to us. That would allow them to have more trust, or us to have more trust in them, and allow us to have more belief in us. But people don't look at it. They just keep going for the analysis. Well, they've said that, so we need to do this, and this is better. We'll stop them from doing that. It doesn't work. It's been proven. That's why the world's in the state it's in.
So the next episode, we're going to talk about fixing the world. So I want to take the first half of what you said. So all of that is exactly right. And the intangible drivers looks at that. So when I want to understand who you are, what I do is I say, what is the effect you want to have on that person? And when you tell me the effect on that person, you want them, their pain bared, Colin, your compassion. I can't tell if you're man, woman, what color, anything. Because I'm looking away from you. So a true synthesis systems thinker, their first question will be to look away from the system. The minute someone looks into the system as their first step, they'll go, well, eventually no. The first step has to be look out. That's the key. The first step we take with you is, what's the effect you want on that person? We look away from you. And the example that Acuff used to always do is he'd talk about a car. So what are the 3 steps in synthesis? And we can use the car. They're the opposite of this analysis thing. Is when he looked at a car, he said, a car is a part of what greater system? Transport. Okay. Now, then he says, now define that greater system. The greater system is transportation of different things, and do all that. Now, from that perspective, look back. So there is an analysis step, but it's never the first step.
Nope.
The minute you can only synthesize to love your analysis. The minute you go to analysis, you're stuck. You're never going to get bigger. You're never going to have the bigger idea. Now the last step is analysis. We synthesize and we analyze. Okay, now what role does a car have in this greater system? A car is a personal, autonomous, safe against the weather means of transporting a person.
Yeah.
That's now we've defined that car because we first went to the system. Whenever anybody tells me that they're a systems thinker, the first question you can ask them is, what's the next greater system? That will instantly, if they can't answer it like that, they're toast. So whatever system you're talking about, what's the next greater system? I went from cell all the way to the world, next greater system. Car, you start talking about car, what's the next greater system? If you're talking about your organization, what's the next bigger system in your organization? Because I want to know, do you see the next bigger system as your community? Like if your headquarters is in Glasgow, do you see the next bigger system as Glasgow? And your organization plays a part in the role of Glasgow, because
Yeah.
that's going to define your company one way versus no, you play a bigger system in helping save the world with all those other organizations. What is the next bigger system? I never, ever, ever, ever hear any consultant talk about the next bigger system than what they're dealing with. And I never, ever, ever, ever hear a system thinker instantly be able to tell me the next bigger system than what they're talking about. Ever. They always go, well, fraud. They are a fraud.
I would love to ask people like Tony Robbins and Gary Vee what they would think on the systems, because they seem to have made tens upon tens of millions and have tens upon tens of millions of followers. And I would like them to ask that question to me, because they seem to be doing it on a large scale level.
Oh, I shared, when I did my post on my LinkedIn book on systems, I shared this with all the biggest influencers saying, and I challenged them, show me something you've read this week that's more important than what I'm talking about right now. None of them responded.
Of course not.
But this is how you fix the world. And this is the key, is this step back. Okay. So like I said, when I talk to a systems thinker, their first question should be to understand, if I initiate, I'm going to ask them their definition. They should have a definition. Or if I share my perspective, if they go, well, I don't agree, their first question should be, what do you mean by? So anyone that doesn't do that, they're wrong. And we talked about arguing in 3 questions, but I want to give you 2 examples of the power of this, before we close this, just to understand this. Because Akoff talked about, what's the next bigger system from learning? Education. If you think about it, because he was very big in education. This is where him and I just locked up like crazy, because he said things about the education field 40 years ago we're still not doing today. And everybody wonders why the education system's a mess. Akoff predicted everything 40 years ago. And I'll give you a great example of this. Because what's the next bigger system from learning? It's teaching.
Yep.
So the only way to master a system is to go outside of it. So I can teach people resiliency, but until I teach them how to flow, they will never master resiliency. Every course out there that teaches resiliency and never takes a step outside of it, when you talk to someone who's taken that course 6 or 9 months later, they will tell you they mastered a part of resiliency. They'll tell you, well, I learned how to control my triggers, or I learned how my, communication, but they're still not resilient. You will not master resiliency until you take a step outside of it. You will not master learning until you teach. So why aren't we getting the kids to teach? Here's what Akoff said 40 years ago. They took a group of, I believe it was elementary school kids. I want to say 2nd, 3rd, or 4th graders. And they had them teach a computer arithmetic. So they had these kids spend a half a year teaching a computer how to learn arithmetic. And at the end of the half a year, they tested these students, and they had learned 2 full years of arithmetic. These kids just learned 4 times faster by teaching rather than learning. And I've said this, if I teach you a fact, you have to repeat it 3 times to learn it. That means you only learn 25% of it.
But what happens when you're teaching the wrong information? And this is what's going on in the world just now. And this is why it's going to the state that it's in. People that believe their teachers, they're picking up on things that are not right. They're teaching it wrongly, and then they're doing it, and then they believe it's right. And then it's just, again, just branching out. And that's where you and I and anyone that's involved in process can then understand that we are part of that system that's trying to allow people to know the truth.
Right. This is how the brain, he understood, he was able to get the effect. He didn't understand how the brain worked, but he got the effect of it. Like I said, he's a truth savant. So he knew this works. He couldn't tell you why, but it's systems. And it's how our brain works. Our brain learns by teaching. Our brain doesn't learn by learning. But all these consultants and all these sum of parts and all these direct, and you're a robot and you're an animal, stop being racist. There, I made you not a racist. You got to do something. I did something. You made it worse. So, unconscious confrontations, doing the opposite. I'll tell you another real quick story. He tells a story about these students. I believe it was in inner city Philadelphia, it was inner city East Coast. And the Black students were not in this elementary school, were not reading.
Yeah.
There was no reading going on at home. And the kids would get beaten up if they took books home. How do you get these kids to learn how to read? What they did was they showed silent movies in the auditorium all day long. And anytime a kid wanted to leave his class and go watch the silent movies, they were allowed to. So now notice how many things this is hitting. Like they're in control, so they have a good emotion. The last thing you want to do is teach somebody something when they don't have a good emotion.
Yeah.
They go to watch these silent movies. Well, there's a story going on, right? We love stories. The brain works according to stories. Yeah. What happens? You watch a story and you want to know what's going on. Well, the only way to know what's going on is the subtitles at the bottom. So now you want to learn what that is because of the story. Well, you're not learning it to learn to read. Yep. You're wanting the story, and as an effect, you're learning to read. That is how our brain works. That is how I help teachers teach students things 3 times faster. You don't teach them 3 times faster by repeating it 3 times more. That actually makes them remember it less. You apply it. And that's the way our brain works, but that's not how we all teach. This is how systems thinking could change the world, is to understand what's the next bigger system. What's the next bigger system from business? All these people, and this is what Akoff was passionate about. He wanted to improve business. He started as one of these business consultants trying to improve business. And then he realized the next bigger system than business, and he realized that was affecting business. So everybody at home, take a moment and ask yourself, what's the next bigger system for business? Ask every business consultant, Mr. Business Consultant, what's the next bigger system than business?
Would that be community?
He said it was education.
All right, okay, yeah.
You notice every business educates.
Yep.
But not every educational institution participates in business.
Yep.
Education is the next greater system. And that's why he went, in order to drive business, I need to understand education. And he spent all his time understanding education. And that's when he learned we're not educating these students right. If we get the business we have because of the education system we have. That was his whole point. You look at business, look at our consultants. You know why we got them? Because our education system looks like this. We need to fix the education system, and that will fix business. I have tried to fix the education system, and you know what they say? Well, but that's not really how the mind and brain thinks. And why do you know what you know? And why doesn't anybody else know? So what do I need to now go fix? Psychology.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. I'm going into psychology. I'm going to help psychologists. And the reason why we're doing these videos, Colin, is anybody in the psychology field who goes, well, wait a minute, how does he, because they don't have a model for the mind and the brain. They don't. Ask any of them their model for the mind and the brain. The minute I present my model for the mind and brain, they never disagree with it, but they won't admit it's right.
Yep.
And they won't admit they're wrong. And the first response out of their mouth is, well, how do you know that? And how come you're the only one who knows that? That's what these videos are about. I am going to share with you my story about how do I know what I know, and why doesn't anybody else? I think part of it's my experience, and part of it's my uniqueness.
Yep.
And that's the thing, is that you can only define a purpose when you understand the greatest system. So that car, if you remember what we did, the car, we understood the car when we understood its uniqueness in the greater system. You will never understand your purpose until you know the next greater system, or the system you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if you can show me a consultant whose first step is to the greater system, please, I'd love to hear it. But every one of these consultants come in and they just start taking things apart. And that's why the world is in the stage it is. And that's why the world keeps getting worse.
Yep. And it's going to keep getting worse until people try and understand at least what we're talking about. And it's not because we're the only ones that are right, because the information that we're giving already is. We're just putting it into words so that they can utilize it better or the best. And this is what they don't understand. Like the people that come to us and go, "You're wrong, how do you know this?" or any of these, it's because they're not understanding that what we're saying already is, because they can't prove us wrong. Nobody can, when I talk about things, I can't be proven wrong. The ones with a more healthy mindset will go, absolutely, everyone should be doing this. And I will say, yes, they should. It's not me that made it up. It's not you that made it up. You've just put words to it, because there is only one truth. And this is where the difference is. There is only one truth. Once you get to it, it's not mine, it's not yours, it's the truth. It's not ours, it's the truth. And this is what people don't realize. Whatever we're promoting or whatever we're saying, we are only channels through our uniqueness to be able to bring that and deliver it to other people, to use it through their uniqueness. And this is where the change is going to happen.
They don't tell us we're wrong, and it's good they don't, because it would destroy them, because their unconscious would knock them down. That's why they can't say you're wrong. Their unconscious would go like that. Yeah. And so we don't get you're wrong. We get, how do you know this? Why doesn't anybody else know this? You're an idiot. I'm going to ignore you. They don't respond. That's what we get. And we're dealing with people, and I get it. You know, I'm just looking for the 1% or the 1 in a million who wants to understand this and change the world, because we don't need everybody. We just need enough people that want the truth and can replicate it. And I want to be able to replicate this. But yeah, we never get, I'd love to be on somebody's show where they tell me I'm wrong in front of a bunch of people. I'd love to have that conversation.
It won't happen, because they know it won't. So listen, honestly, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to getting onto your story very soon, and I'm looking forward for people to understand. I have waited a year for this, and it's generally, and you know, I've not had anything given away, and I just want people to understand that. John and I have been friends now for nearly 2 years. We talk every week, a couple of times. We literally know each other, but I don't know his story. And this is what's exciting for all of us. So I will be listening firsthand, the same as everyone else. So thank you so much, John. Have an awesome week. Take it easy.
Bye.